The Out of Bounds Show podcast is brought to you by BankPlus. BankPlus, it's more than a name, it's a promise.
WRKS Pickens Jackson.
All systems go.
Live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the BankPlus Studio.
This is now warning.
Live in the studio. It's the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Streaming live worldwide on the Out of Bounds radio app. And on your radio at ESPN 105.9.
All set? Let's go.
The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome in to all you crazy people. It is the silly season, and that includes the coaching carousel and college football recruiting. We are the Out of Bounds Show. 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, WRKS. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. That's what you want to download if you want to win any cool stuff like our 3 winners from Friday. Cool stuff, Out of Bounds radio app. Cool stuff, Out of Bounds radio app. In fact, I just found a whole box of Tito's vodka golf swag. Didn't even know we had it. So, I mean, it's fun. It's like Christmas back there in those 2 rooms. You know, golf covers, golf balls, golf tees, golf shirts. Out of Bounds radio app, Blake. Christmas comes early, baby. Well, if you'll just wait 5 seconds, things will change in this sport. That is for sure. You can hit us up on the Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line, 601-707-3750. Twitter handle at BowBounds, brought to you by RPT and Rick's Pro Truck. Spraying bed liners, lift kits, tires, and wheels. RPT, ricksprotruck.com. Hit us up on the Ag Up Equipment Mississippi Ag text line, 601-885-3776. 885-3776. I've got Blake Mania with me. I am your host, Bo Bounds, and we've got a good show lined up for you today. We'll have Tom Luganbill, who will join us at 8:30. Tom Luganbill, national college football analyst with ESPN. You see him on the tube all the time. Lugs will join us at 8:30 to take a look at the Sugar Bowl, the new Oklahoma staff, and all the craziness that's going on in the world of SEC and college football. I want to say congratulations to Ole Miss. Punching their ticket to the Sugar Bowl to play Baylor. That's a good opponent to grab in the Shug. No doubt about that. As you out-recruit the Baylor Bears by miles. Ole Miss, Baylor on New Year's Day night. How about that? 7:45 to be exact. Maybe 7:46, but it'll be a night game in NOLA in the Caesars Superdome. Congratulations to Hail State football. They're going to the Liberty Bowl. I haven't run the traps on, how that happened or if it was because of proximity or whatever. You would have much rather been in the Texas Bowl or the Music City. But you're in the Liberty Bowl. So you're playing Texas Tech, who, again, like Baylor, doesn't have a lot of sizzle. But Mike Leach coached there, right? The Pirate. That's where he was kind of introduced to the world of college football, even though he had done some amazing things at Oklahoma, at Kentucky, and at Valdosta State, and some other stops. Mike Leach cut his teeth, became a multimillionaire, won a ton of games, beat number 1 Texas, all that stuff at Texas Tech.
Why is there air?
That, too. We'll get into why there's air. And, Blake, you were born in Lubbock, Texas?
Yeah, sure, right outside there. That's where I spent the first part of my life.
Which was like a year.
The Dirt Bowl. No, it's like 4 years, but yeah.
Are you sure it was 4 years?
Yeah, I promise.
Okay. All right.
So, that was back when Big Ed was wild, and he was the fraternity advisor for SIGEP at Texas Tech.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And my mom was the sorority advisor for Zeta, I think is what she is. They were both fraternity sorority advisors, and so my babysitters for the first 4 years of my life were all
college
the
students.
all the sorority girls.
Yeah.
And my mom was was a mother to, or however you want to, advisor to.
That's
whatever.
awesome.
Yeah, way out in the plains, the Dust Bowl of Texas Tech.
What year were you born?
91.
Okay, so they were there in 91, 92, 93.
Yeah, I think
maybe
we moved,
94?
we moved here somewhere either 94-ish or 5-ish, something like that. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I have those still image pictures in my head of Lubbock, right? I can remember like my backyard.
I can't remember. I find this hard to believe. I'd like to hear from our listeners. I can't remember anything from 4 years old.
Here's what I can remember. It's still images. I can remember my backyard had a sand pit in it. My neighbor was a motorcycle cop, and he used to ride me and my across the street neighbor, who was a young girl about my age. He would take us on the back of his motorcycle and like ride up the street and down the street every now and then with us.
That sounds
which
dangerous.
was really cool. Yeah, I know. Shout out Lubbock Police in the 90s.
Wow.
And then
a little Top Gun action?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Leather jacket, helmet, yeah.
CWR says, I struggle to remember 4 years ago. I think some of us struggle to remember an hour ago. But Blake's trying to convince us that he remembers the Dust Bowl at 4 years old.
I remember still images. That's my point. I can remember like pictures in my head, right? I can remember still images.
You should write a book on Lubbock, Texas.
That's
how much time you spent.
Me and Mike Leach.
He could co-write it with you.
It would be a bestseller.
Well, all it would take is like an evening with him.
Yeah.
That would bleed into about 3 a.m.
Maybe that's what
with
we call
beverages.
it.
And you could get the whole book. Just like put a recorder down.
Yeah.
You could get a whole book. You'd be done.
Maybe we call it like an evening in
Lubbock. And then you
Lubbock.
can turn it into the people who write it for you, but it will be the book that you wrote.
Done.
Yeah.
Done. An evening in Lubbock with Mike Leach.
An evening.
That'll be what it's called.
That sounds terrible. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to make it to
It's
Lubbock.
a book of poems by Mike Leach.
If you had to guess, do you think I'll make it to Lubbock, Texas?
No chance.
Okay.
It is out there. You start driving
but
and you keep driving.
Better percentage, if you handicapped, better percentage that I'll make it to San Antonio?
Yes.
Okay.
Way better than to San Antonio than Lubbock. I knew where that was
Somebody
going.
tried to tell me when we were debating that a few weeks ago that they had arena football. I thought,
hey, Jackson's about to have arena football.
Yeah, that's right.
Shock them, baby.
How much will it
Hey,
take?
Ben
How much will it take for me to go there?
Ben Roethlisberger's retaring after this season. We can
he can be the
bring him down to
Jackson
the,
Bandits arena football
No,
quarterback.
the Bandits was
Whatever.
the
It's the
hockey
same thing.
team. You remember that?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it.
Dude, great times back in the days at the hockey games.
Mississippi is the only state that had a semi-pro hockey team and didn't serve beer. You can't make that. I mean, a good friend of mine told me this years ago. The only reason that minor league baseball survives is because of cold beer. This isn't hard to figure out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Promotions. Okay. It's all about the promotions.
Wow. All right. So big takeaway from the weekend. It's hard to take the king down. Nick Saban runs his protege out of the Mercedes-Benz Georgia Dome.
They got Muschamped.
How about that?
Bro.
How about that?
Receivers running wide open on that Georgia defense.
Wide open.
That Jamison Williams touchdown that made it 10-7 that they go back and John Mechie talked about after the game, said that was the spark. That was when the game swung for them because they couldn't get going in the first quarter.
Right.
And they hit that 70-something yard bomb to Mechie, to Williams, and it was really a 20-yard pass right across the middle. But there was nobody within 30 feet of him. And then he just takes off and scores, and after that it was off to the races. Incredible. Never saw it coming.
And then they just poured it on.
That's what I'm saying. It was done at that point.
I mean, they poured it on.
Well, and what did Georgia do that we talked about all year? What would happen if they got into a game where they had to score? They couldn't score.
Well, they didn't have the playmaker.
Nope.
As much as we love Stetson Bennett IV, and the story is incredible. And here's the funny part. They still may win the Natty. I mean, Georgia could come back and win the national championship because they're in it, as y'all know, right? I mean, they're the third seed. Bama 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincinnati 4. Everybody can't wait to that Bama-Cincinnati game. Now you give Bama almost 4 weeks to get their legs under them. Ooh, 15 more practices for an offense that's continuing to find themselves. Oh, man. Gonna be a bad deal for Luke Fickell and the Cincinnati Bearcats, baby. The show is powered by the Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook and award-winning Dancing Rabbit Golf Club. Good morning. Welcome in. Big board and then SEC Insider hit. Here we go. Oh, shout out to Gardner Minshew. What a baller. The Out of Bounds Show podcast is brought to you by Boar's Head. Premium meats, cheeses, and hummus. Boar's Head. Compromise elsewhere.
What's on the big board?
Oh, wow. CWR on the Ag Up Equipment Mississippi Ag text line, 601-885-3776. He wants to go ahead and call his shot. Bo, I'll go ahead and say it. Georgia will beat Michigan. Iowa had receivers open all during the first half, but their QB couldn't hit them. Bryce Young, Matt Corral, Mr. Ranch Dressing would have had a field day against the Michigan Wolverines. How about Jim Harbaugh, excuse me. John lost on a 2-point conversion yesterday, but let's get to Jim first.
Weren't they going to fire him last season?
We're going to fire him. Now he's in the college football playoff as the number 2 seed.
As quickly as it can go wrong for a guy like Orgeron or Gene Chizik, it can go right for a guy like Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
There you go. What a difference a season makes. They were ready to run him this time last year.
Built San Diego and Stanford. Led the San Francisco 49ers to a Super Bowl.
That's right.
After those two rebuilding jobs, well, I guess you could add San Francisco.
Yeah. 3 rebuilds.
3 rebuilds. People still didn't think he could coach. He's at a program that's vastly overrated, but still has some muscle and some strength. Again, doesn't mean they're not a good program.
But they were like 2 decades behind modern football when he took them over.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like when John Cohen took over Mississippi State baseball.
Woof. Ouch.
Right? I mean, that program was run like it was 1982. Cohen modernized it. Jim Harbaugh. Here we go. Jim Harbaugh modernized the Michigan football program. Sometimes it takes a little while. I mean, I think there's men and women that know that, they built a business and it took them 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to really get up and going. 10. And they continue to grow in 10, 12, year 14. All right. Ole Miss to the Sugar Bowl. Is Jeff Lebby leaving Ole Miss? It looks like it, to join Brent Venables.
Who?
All right, so Brent Venables is the longtime defensive coordinator at Clemson. And Venables spent 13 years at Oklahoma and 10 years at Clemson. So the last 23 years of his life, he's been at Oklahoma and Clemson. And he has like 3 national championship rings, 1 in Oklahoma,
2 at Clemson,
and 2 at Clemson. And then they played in another 2 of them? Or
yeah, they're
1?
2 and 2 in
Okay.
Clemson. Yeah.
All right. So he's lived in the college football playoff, lived in big games, had to face Bama, played Georgia a bunch, beat the brakes off of some teams, lost some tough ones, all that stuff. He has been Dabo's, dude on the defensive side of the football. It allowed Dabo to do the other things that he needs to do to be the head guy in the Clemson football program. So now Brent Venables, after a decade at Clemson and spent 13 years at Oklahoma, will be officially announced today as the University of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner, head coach. Strong rumors starting all the way back on Friday?
Yeah.
That if they got it done, that he wanted to tap Jeff Lebby, I guess OC or co-OC, however you want to run those numbers, at Ole Miss. And Lebby is an Oklahoma alum, and Lebby was a student at Oklahoma when Brent Venables was at the University of Oklahoma. You could argue that was one of the biggest recruiting jobs in the history of college football. When Dabo was able to land Brent Venables and recruit him and hire him away from Oklahoma, don't forget that Bob Stoops had rehired his brother.
Mark.
All right, Mike. Mark is at Kentucky.
Mike, that's right, yeah.
And so Mike had been at Arizona. It didn't work out. Greg Byrne fired him and hired Rich Rod. And anyway,
which also didn't work.
The rest is actually Rich Rod had a for Arizona standards, he had a very productive run
and had a Heisman candidate quarterback at one point.
And he's the head football coach at Jacksonville State now,
which is crazy.
Yeah, he's making almost $1 million a year. So he's still. I mean, Rich Rod's made a ton of money. He's a good coach. He's a good football coach. He did a magnificent job at Tulane OC, Clemson OC, and then of course West Virginia head coach. He ran into the whole Michigan Bear. When you have people in the athletic department that are trying to hijack, or any business, people that run their mouths in companies and stir up stuff. We all know about that. They were trying to hijack anything and everything that he did. It wasn't going to be successful. But back to Brent Venables. Strong undercurrent rumors that it is done that Jeff Lebby will be heading to the University of Oklahoma as an OC. Your thoughts on the Ag Up equipment, Mississippi Ag text line, 601-885-3776. And Joe Brady was fired from the Carolina Panthers.
Wrongly.
Yeah, Matt Rule needed a scapegoat.
Yeah.
And so Joe Brady lost his job. If y'all remember, Brady was the kind of young OC that made it all happen for LSU when they won it all a couple of years ago with Joe Burrow. So he's now unemployed. And what does that mean? Well, does Joe Brady stay in the NFL? Or does he grab one of these coveted OC jobs at the
Southern Cal? I don't think they have an OC yet, do they, under Lincoln? Lincoln going to run that himself?
Yeah, I don't think Joe Brady wants to go somewhere where the head coach is going to call the plays.
I would agree with that.
Maybe. I don't think so. Does Brian Kelly have an OC yet? Tommy D's decided to stay at Notre Dame.
Could you imagine Brady going back to LSU under another head coach?
Absolutely.
That would be wild, wouldn't it?
And what does this mean for Dabo Swinney? Boy, this is a monster hire. Clemson, just found their way to that beachside property and have been a monster the last 7 years and played so well. And they've been so well coached by Dabo and Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott and Brent Venables. I mean, that staff has done a remarkable job,
and they've
coaching and developing football players.
Consistently been pretty stout defensively. I mean, even this year, the only reason they were in games is because of their defense.
Taylor thinks that Kiffin is already down the road with Joe Brady to replace Lebby. Would Joe Brady want to do that for a year? He's not going to be the main man on offense, just like Jeff Lebby wasn't. But you can pay him, $1.5 million to $2 million, and he's still a piece of the puzzle, just like Jeff Lebby was, right? But Jeff at Oklahoma gets to run the whole deal, which is what a lot of people are looking for. Joe Moorhead just took a job at Akron because he wants to be a head coach so bad. He got a taste of it. He believes he is a head coach. He's now going to go to a crappy football program with really no money and try to make it work. Which maybe at that level, maybe that's his level. Where was he before that? It wasn't Furman, but it was Fordham. Same thing. But anyway, back to kind of what's going on there with Jeff Lebby, with Joe Brady, and all that. Brent Venables, the new head football coach for the University of Oklahoma.
First true chink in the armor for Dabo and Clemson?
Could be that and Jeff Scott, but maybe obviously more so with Venables. Also, man, when you want to go get the king, Saban, you got to ball out. And when you don't have a quarterback that can make a play, Blake, it makes it even more difficult to take the king down and the monster of Alabama. And, boy, they showed up and showed out on Saturday in Atlanta. We are the Out of Bounds Show, brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. SEC Insider Hit coming up next. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent.
The Out of Bounds Show podcast is powered by Breezy Oaks Ranch. For Mississippi-raised premium Wagyu beef and heritage pork shipped straight to your door, visit breezyoaksranch.com.
Come on.
Everyone ready?
This is the SEC Insider Hit. Presented by your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Go local. Go with a home team.
All right. Good morning. Welcome into the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Ole Miss and Baylor in the Sugar Bowl. In the Shug. Ole Miss, with 10 wins, will play the Baylor Bears and Dave Aranda in the Sugar Bowl on New Year's Day, but it'll be at night and January 1. How about that? And then in the Liberty Bowl, you have MSU and Texas Tech. Texas Tech, who fired their coach, a couple months ago, and then, hired a Baylor assistant. It's incredible. And, but he won't be coaching in the game. And I don't think that's not usually what happens. And Mississippi State and Texas Tech will play in the Liberty Bowl on December 28th. How about that? December 28th, the Liberty Bowl. And I think the only really interesting piece of that puzzle is, the fact, I guess, that Mike Leach spent, a decade in Lubbock, Texas, as the Texas Tech head coach, and that's where he kind of introduced the air raid to the country. The SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Let me give you the Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line, 601-707-3750. We had some really good callers last week, by the way. 601-707-3750. So the big news coming out of the weekend is Ole Miss to the Sugar Bowl. Saban and Bama absolutely dominated the Georgia Bulldogs. Can't count them out, can you? When you want to go get the man and the king and all of that, Saban and his staff did a great job. They put up 41 points. 41 points on Georgia, who had been giving up 7 points per game. I want you to think about that. All season long, Georgia had given up 84 points, and they gave up 41 to Alabama. That great dominating defense. Man, if you can throw it, it changes everything. Bryce Young, 26 of 44 for 421 and 3 touchdowns. Bama had receivers running wide open, and Georgia couldn't put pressure like we thought they would on Bryce Young. I'd love to get your thoughts on the game, what it means for Saban and Bama back in the college football playoff. What does it mean for Georgia and Kirby? They're in the college football playoff, could still win it. Our Ag Up Equipment Mississippi Ag text line is 601-885-3776. And Deion Sanders in Jackson State with the SWAC championship at Veterans Memorial Stadium. What does that mean for Jackson State? Or does Deion have to stay for a while for it to really mean anything? I mean, it means you won the championship, and that's great right now. I'm talking about like long-term residual impact. How does that work? And what does that do for Jackson State? But hey, you won the SWAC championship. Deion's done a good job. And I guess he's staying. You don't ever know with Deion, right? We didn't even think that he would be focused enough to do this. I didn't. Now, granted, I don't really know the level. I mean, Jackson State should be good in the SWAC. They've lost their way post W.C. Gordon. I mean, when I was growing up, Jackson State was awesome. And W.C. Gordon was a great, great coach. Great coach. I mean, Eddie Robinson was a great coach, but W.C. Gordon was a great coach. So what kind of impact and residual impact does it have on Jackson State? I mean, does he need to do this 3 times and really do some other things? Do you think Deion, to me, is not really a guy that hangs around long, but I don't know what job offers. He doesn't really specialize. So a big school's not going to come in and get him as, I know you feel like Deion's offense, but he played corner. I mean, he grew up cutting his teeth as a cornerback. Some would argue the best to shut down one side of the field, maybe in the history of the NFL. But he grew up as a defensive specialist. Yes, he played special teams, capable of playing offense. But he's not really a play caller like we think of when we think of Brent Venables as the DC at Clemson, right? Or Lane Kiffin as a play caller, or some of these other guys. So I don't know. I'm happy for Jackson State. They've wanted to win for a while, and they were going through coaches left and right. And I thought this thing would be, and it's been a little bit of an S show, but they've been able to keep it. Maybe Deion out recruited his coaching, and there's nothing wrong with that. Know who you are. We're just going to put better players on the field, and even if we can't quite X and O at that level, we're going to have. I mean, Georgia thought they were doing that this weekend, but a little bit different, obviously, with Bama as the composite 1A recruiter in college football, maybe just behind Georgia. Maybe you want to argue that a little bit different today. That's something to keep an eye on. Another story, Jeff Lebby, Ole Miss OC. Blake, he looks like he's going to Oklahoma. We've got Ole Miss fans on our text line saying that Lane is already down the road with hiring Joe Brady. Joe Brady was fired from the Carolina Panthers, I guess, yesterday. So that's another story. Both of our teams bowling, Ole Miss in one of the New Year's Six bowl games in the Sugar for the first time since 2015. So it hadn't been that long. 6 years later, after all they went through with freeze and so on and probation. Kiffin and Corral, but especially number 2. Arguably the most talented player to ever play that position at Ole Miss, and that's saying something. Will lead them to the Sugar Bowl, and they should take care of Baylor. I mean, you out-recruit them. They're in the Big 12, and that could be win number 11 for Lane Train. Also, Lane agrees to his contract. It was a little bit of a nerve-wracking week, maybe, for Ole Miss, as rumors swirled that he could be in consideration for a big job. He was not. He did not receive an offer for any of the big positions. We expect Oregon to come open this morning, Blake, but evidently Lane Train's not interested in that. He's going to continue to roll at Ole Miss for now. Mario Cristobal is a Miami Hurricanes alum, and he's the head coach at for the Oregon, or maybe is the head coach for the Oregon Ducks. And it looks like he's going to go back to where he grew up. And literally, he grew up there and then, of course, played for Jimmy Johnson at the U. So we'll have another opening with the Oregon Ducks, which is a good job. It's not a great job, but it's a good job. And they've committed financially and so on. And, of course, they got all the buzz starting 15 years ago with the cool uniforms. They're probably a little overvalued.
Yeah,
I think they are, but I think young people gravitate. It was right when people were getting highlights on their phones and so on, and they were wearing all kinds of cool stuff and gear and uniforms, and then they were really good on offense. And see that, I mean, I've watched it with my son, and many of you know it. When they're 8, 9, 10, they need something that's usually offensive driven, highlights, right? 3 yards in a cloud of dust isn't going to get it for them. Georgia didn't, for the next set of 8, 9, 10-year-olds, Georgia didn't do it for them this year.
Yep.
Even though they were awesome. They want to see, Bama sling it, Ole Miss sling it, or when they were, do that sort of thing. So Oregon's open. Another story, and I think this is, it's one of my favorite things about, I think, life and sports and all that kind of good stuff, is that none other than Gardner Minshew, who has played good football in the NFL. He just happened to be at a crappy franchise. That's not his fault. He happened to be at a crappy franchise where people still were reluctant to, I think, give Minshew credit where he deserved. Minshew had a monster game yesterday for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they won. How cool is that, Blake?
Other than I hate the Eagles, it was pretty cool to see Gardner get some good playing time and get a win. And the emotional video, obviously, I think that
of his dad,
so many people have seen, and if you haven't, I think it's on the Twitters at BoBounds. You can check it out on the timeline. Gardner and his dad after the game kind of fight, and you can just see. I mean, Gardner just wants to play. He just wants to be on the field. Win or lose, he's just trying to get out on the field.
He's a ball guy, Jim Rata.
Yeah.
There's no wonder he and Jake Mangum are super close buddies. They're cut from the same cloth. Yeah. You're just good luck keeping those two down.
Yeah, and he played very well Sunday. Again, as much as I hate to say it, I was hoping that he would play well and they would lose, but it was a nice job by Gardner, and it's one of those situations where the Eagles have still said that even after the game that Hurts is QB1. So you wonder, can Gardner get somewhere where they're going to give him the full season?
You
to
would
run
think
with
so,
it, right?
His contract opens up this spring, Blake.
Yeah, you need, if you're Gardner Minshew, you just have to be on the field. It's impossible to show what it's. Dak Prescott would have been Gardner Minshew if Tony Romo doesn't go down,
right?
Because he never would have gotten the chance to show it, and teams don't give fourth rounders
until somebody gets hurt.
But teams don't give fourth
Trevor
rounders.
Siemian.
Exactly. Teams don't give fourth rounders the option to get, or the opportunity to show it very often. So Gardner has to find those slivers of opportunity, and he took advantage of one yesterday. Which
True
was exciting.
Maroon on the Ag Up Equipment Mississippi Ag text line said the New Orleans Saints need Gardner Minshew out of Brandon, Mississippi.
Problem is they'll go get a rookie for 10 times less contract.
Of course,
money.
Gardner may not. He's going to ask for some money, but it's not going to be Mahomes Dak money, right? No. So you could still fit it in a $200 million budget. I think we go crazy a little bit. I mean, I don't even know what he's going to ask, Blake. Do you happen to know? Is it going to be like $8 million? My gosh, Taysom Hill's getting paid $8 million a year. If that's the case, Gardner Minshew's worth $18 million a year. But anyway,
it'll be somewhere along that lines. It's not even going to be. I mean, we're not talking about market deals at this point. You're talking about
somewhere between 10 and 15 million
backup deals, and maybe less than that. Okay, yeah.
Well, that's true. That's true. If he's not being coveted as a starter,
he's going to get paid.
It will
backup.
be much less than that.
Yeah.
If he can only find a spot to go in as a backup and win his way back in, that is something to look at. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Just real quick. We think that the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans are going to draft, somewhere in the 1 or 2 range, Blake.
Yes, they're both terrible.
And that Matt Corral and some others, so they'll go college.
Most likely, yes, correct.
So Gardner and his agent have to be very strategic and say, who do we think is out there that will actually float me a contract, but that I can beat out eventually?
Well, yeah, you don't want to
I'll walk in the building and I may not be the starter.
Yeah.
But now, if like Russell Wilson leaves Seattle,
that's
maybe you could land there and be the starter,
because they don't have a pick high enough, and they got rid of their first round pick to the Jets, so they don't have a pick even where they could draft one of those guys.
And the Saints may not be close to in the right market for a good college QB.
Yeah, it's going to depend on who they value for sure. If you're Gardner, what you don't want to do is go to a situation where you're facing against a rookie or a second year QB, because teams are so much more inclined to see what they have with those young guys than a guy like Gardner Minshew, where most NFL teams think they know what Gardner Minshew is, right? And so whether they do or not is irrelevant. They think they do.
There's plenty of franchises that don't know anything about QB.
No, I don't disagree.
I watched football yesterday.
But they operate with the assumptions that they do, and you have to go
and I may
under
not know
those
what's
rules.
going on, but I can tell if you have a good quarterback or not.
Yeah, you have to go under those rules. And so the way I look at it is if you are a backup QB behind a first or second year QB, you're not getting playing time.
Okay.
That's the problem. So
All
he's
right.
got to go somewhere where he can get playing time.
And every now and then, though, you have a franchise that doesn't care. They're bottom line business, right?
Yes.
But you're right.
But it's very difficult to get those situations.
And then another story. Golly, do we have stories for days? This is so wonderful and delicious. I mean, it's like Blake and I walked into a 34-ounce bone-in ribeye. Although Blake's like, actually, it's not. But that's the way I feel. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Congratulations to Madison Central and Brandon. And congratulations to Madison Central for their W at The Rock. So they won it all. We had the metro area battle for the 6A championship. And Madison Central wins that one. And, they had to throw Jake Norris in at quarterback. There was a lot of stuff going on. He ended up playing well and so on. Blake, just in case you didn't know, Jeff Norris, his uncle, was my first co-host when I started doing this on Super Sport 930 in 2003.
Small world, isn't it?
How about that?
Small world.
How about that? I watched that game, by the way, every single snap.
It was much better than the Pac-12 championship game.
It was actually a fun high school football game to watch. I enjoyed watching a lot of high school football this year, obviously MRA, and then Madison County coming with the championships. So there you go. Blake can't take shots at Madison Central anymore for a while. Live in the BankPlus Studio, out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're powered by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundling your auto and home, that's how you save. How do I save money? Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Blake mentioned this earlier. Our explosive plays this year are brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Blake, what about Alabama's explosive plays? What about receivers running wide open? Wide open.
Yeah.
Okay? And at that intermediate level, Blake, and even some deep balls, but at that intermediate level, Bama made hay.
Yeah, it's all
Didn't
about,
you think?
It's all about throwing it 15 and running for another 10, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. Hitting a guy in stride, as you did Jamison Williams.
Did you see how frustrated Georgia's secondary was after a couple of those?
Well, because
once they started pitching and catching in the second quarter,
the secondary can only do so much. You can give me 5 Deion Sanders and a good offensive scheme with a good offensive line can still get guys open.
It's true.
Doesn't matter how good your corners are. You're not designed. The game is not designed for a corner to stay on a receiver for 6 seconds.
No.
And so
it's impossible.
When Georgia wasn't,
it's arguably the hardest position.
So I'm saying, give me, even if I have give me 5 Deion Sanders,
corners?
I can still get guys open.
Brutal.
Okay? So when Georgia couldn't get pressure, that was the key to me. Alabama kept the tempo. They weren't snapping it quickly, but what they were doing was getting to the line quickly, which prevented Georgia from subbing their front 5, which prevented Georgia from getting push, not only throughout the game, but especially late in the second quarter and then into the third and fourth quarter. They couldn't get push on Bryce Young, and that changed the game.
Well, we asked the question, once Georgia was challenged, how would they respond? And they just had not – nobody had even made them uncomfortable, Blake.
Correct.
The SEC is down this. Listen to this. I mean, think about this. I know Georgia benefited from a down SEC. Listen to this. LSU 6-6. These are 3 big names. LSU went 6-6.
Yep.
Florida went 6-6. Auburn went 6-6.
It's crazy.
They combined going 18-18. Throw in A&M and Tennessee, and none of those 5 teams even won 9 games. I want you to say that out loud. LSU, Auburn, Florida, A&M, Tennessee. Out of those 5, they didn't win 9 games. If I take LSU, Florida, and Auburn, they were a combined 18-18 this year. Georgia was never if you thought the West was down, and it was, the East was awful. Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Missouri, What you got? What you got? Oh, sorry. I didn't throw in South Carolina. My bad. They're so easy to forget. Is that terrible? Oh, well. What else is out there? Bryce Young won the Heisman?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'd still vote for Matt Corral, but Bryce Young's he will win the Heisman.
Running away.
I got to give him credit against Auburn when they had to have it from 97 yards out. He made the plays. And, man, on Saturday, he picked Georgia apart. But as Blake said, they kept him clean. And his ability, his escapability and mobility was also a big factor.
Which he didn't use. It was so interesting. I think this was Cole Kubelik who tweeted this out. It was Felica. It was Chris Felica, the Bear, on College Game Day.
Chris Felica.
He tweeted out that the Alabama we saw against Georgia is who we thought they could be, but not who we saw through 12 games. I agree wholeheartedly. There's people on the text line, and I get it. You know, if you're a Bama fan, you have fun with today because people had written you off for the most part, which is a rare occurrence in Tuscaloosa history.
No kidding.
So, but
why? Because our expectations of them
are so high,
are so out of whack.
But they also didn't show what they did Saturday. They really did not show you all season.
True,
they didn't. Bryce Young wasn't running around like that.
I mean, he had some wonderful moments throughout the year, but what you're saying is like over a 5-game stretch.
They didn't play 60 minutes like that all season.
No,
they didn't. Not once all season.
No,
and so I don't think we undersold Alabama. I think Bama undersold themselves throughout the course of the season, and we kind of took for granted that they wouldn't be able to turn it on the way they did against Georgia because they had not turned it on all year. I mean, what they did against Auburn was incredible, but it was really low percentage. Like they played poorly for 58 minutes.
They did.
So why would you expect them to play great
and Auburn
for 60?
Played out of their minds.
Yeah. But the other side of that is maybe we took it for granted that Alabama wasn't already thinking about Georgia. I don't know.
True.
They played if Alabama had played like they did against Georgia all season, they would have been the unanimous number one.
Yeah.
They would have been favored by 10 points.
But their bottom line is their offensive and defensive scoring efficiency numbers did not give us a blueprint.
Nope.
For what they did on Saturday.
Yeah. And they still struggled to run the ball.
So you have to go by the bigger.
Correct.
I mean, if we're looking at sample size, you got to go by the 12 games from Labor Day to Thanksgiving.
We don't just decide when we're talking prognostication. It's not just, I like this team and there's no reason.
Right.
There's always a reason for it. Sometimes the reason doesn't turn into the result. This is one of those instances where all of our evidence didn't say Alabama would win by two touchdowns, 3 touchdowns.
And they weren't in the top 10 or 15 in offensive or defensive scoring efficiency.
But Georgia's offense was a misleading number.
It was a misnomer. And here's, okay, you're about to hit I love the story of Stetson Bennett the fourth. We all feel like we've had to overcome something. We all feel like we've been overlooked. But Blake, he couldn't make a play.
Correct. And he didn't have he didn't have an Elijah Moore. He didn't have an A.J. Brown.
That's a good point.
He didn't have someone who was so alpha, an Amari Cooper, a Calvin Ridley, that could get open against anyone.
Right. Anytime.
And it was safety blanket.
Right.
It was like, I need 6 yards. Here you go. Curl route. You're open. 6 yards.
Where's
done.
Jordan Jefferson on this
Yeah,
field?
there wasn't anybody like that. And I know they thought Pickens could be that, but he hadn't played all year.
Right.
And he just wasn't ready to do it.
Right.
We'll see if that
Plus,
changes.
they hadn't played like that all year.
No, they hadn't had to.
I mean, when you haven't repped it, you don't just flip it on game day.
Correct.
Interesting.
And that was at the end of the day, you saw the team with the better quarterback and the better history in that experience win the game.
And the better head coach.
Yep.
And Kirby's a good coach, but the better head coach. The Out of Bounds Show is powered by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Good morning. Welcome in on a Max Effort Monday. Tom Luganville, 8:30 on the Out of Bounds Show.